All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael Gateley. This is the CT results-based on-site monitoring session for Perkins 5. You should have received a notification last week for your LEA's monitoring status to ensure you knew which monitoring tier you're participating at and which session to attend today. A couple of things I wanted to ensure before we get to looking through the monitoring instrument, which is what we're going to do for the bulk of this session, to give you a better idea of what evidence is being required and what questions we'll be asking of LEAs to ensure compliance with Perkins 5. I wanted to share with you that the schools that we will pick for your LEA to participate in on-site monitoring will be, and as well the dates of the monitoring will be shared next month. So in August, probably mid to late August, we'll share that with all LEAs. We will be contacting you to ensure that we schedule those times and dates that will work with your LEA schedule. I wanted to ensure that everyone understands as well that we don't just choose LEAs to participate in risk-based monitoring, or results-based monitoring, excuse me. All LEAs, we gather the data from CCTE, from E-Plan, from other sources, and we run a risk analysis to ensure that the districts that are, or LEAs that are showing a little more, exhibiting a little more risk in certain categories, will kind of bubble up to the top. As a reminder, everybody is going to participate in monitoring every year. So we have our different tiers. We have on-site, desktop, and self-assessment. If you're not chosen for on-site or desktop, then you will have to participate in self-assessment. Again, all of these tiers are built into E-Plan, the E-Plan platform. They're easy to navigate to. I'll show you how to get there in just a second. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that that's how LEAs are chosen, and that the schools that will participate within your LEA and the dates of the monitorings will be sent out next month. I have a co-host, Geneva Taylor, who will be answering questions via chat, I believe. So if you have any questions, feel free to share those, and she will take care of those.
Good morning, everyone. I look forward to answering your questions today.
All right. And in an effort to share, or excuse me, save some internet bandwidth here, I'm going to stop sharing my video. You should be able to see my screen. You can see the CTE results-based on-site monitoring sections here in E-Plan. To get here, what I did was, and just for FYI, I'm signed in so that you see right now what it would look like from a CT director perspective. So I would sign in like I normally would in E-Plan, and I would go over to the left-hand side to monitoring, and then select monitoring instruments. I'll point out that this is Bedford County, but it's just a sample LEA that was placed into this test platform. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That's just up there. The status right now is in draft started. So just like with your Perkins Basic, if you make a change to the local application, or when you're writing your local application, whatever, you'll have to click draft started. You'll have to do that same thing here. You'll see a box that says selected school. So that's where you would click the selected school when it comes time for you or for the school level staff to enter information. So we'll go down through here. You'll see, just like with Perkins Basic, you've got the history log, create a comment area. So here's the overview. We're going to click on Introduction and Overview of Monitoring Process first. So this section will show you, or talk a little bit about Perkins 5, the reasons we do monitoring while we perform that act in Tennessee. It talks about the law and how we identify LEAs. Then it goes through the monitoring process and talks about identification, when we identify LEAs, the data collection. So we use all forms of data collection, one being CTE attendance at your study councils and your big state-held meetings, quarterly drawdowns, reimbursement timeline. We use years of experience as a CTE director, as well as several other categories. This year, the risk analysis had fewer categories due to our school closures and incomplete data collection, such as our core indicator data and some other areas there as well. We have communication there. It talks about how we communicate with LEAs and when we will do that. We're ahead of schedule this year. The school selection, so we will be selecting schools within each LEA to participate in results-based monitoring, and we will notify you of those schools. Preparation talks about how to prepare for on-site monitoring here. It talks about the on-site visits. Just as a reminder, as we talked about in our CTE director meetings, our on-site visits normally would take place actually in the schools and at the central office for each LEA, but this year we will be doing all of our on-site monitoring via virtual means, most likely WebEx. So we will not physically be on site, but we'll still be talking with you in a group setting and one-on-one settings during your monitoring. We discussed the exit there. After the monitoring, approximately 2 weeks after, we will have an exit meeting via WebEx, and we will discuss the findings and areas that you excelled in. We have follow-up and technical assistance, where we will discuss, the follow-up after the exit call. We discuss who's going to do that technical assistance, provide that technical assistance. That'll be your CTE4 consultant that will be providing that. And then closure. So once the LEA, CTE directors and other staff complete all the required action steps to bring areas back into compliance, and that's ensured by FPO and by your core staff, we close the monitoring. So just like with your Perkins Basic, I'm going to click on this sections here to get back to that main area, so I can go to the next here. So we have instructions and reference notes, and I'm not going to go as in detail here so that we can get into the actual sections and look at the evidence and questions that we have. Pre-visit required evidence to be uploaded. It talks about that there. You got pre-visit practices, where it gives you instructions on how to answer the agree, disagree questions. We'll go through that in just a second as we look at some of those. Pre-visit open response. Those are your short answer open response questions that we'll give you information about. And reference notes there. You will see that your questions are have the Perkins 5 law cited with those as you look through this monitoring instrument. So if you have questions about where the question came from or why we're asking a certain question, you can find that by following the breadcrumb trail, if you will, of the citation there. There's also a section with CTE acronyms. Then you have the visit participants and information. That's going to be the TDOE will be responsible for completing that. We'll be getting that information from you. It's going to have in there everybody from TDOE that's going to participate, as well as from your staff and anybody at the LEA that will be participating. We also have assurances. So just like with your Perkins Basic, you're going to have assurances saying that everything you upload, everything you discuss is accurate to your knowledge. So to get into the meat of the monitoring instrument, the first thing we're going to click on is under this LEA Information Organization and Initiatives, big bold heading here. Our first section is LEA Information Organization and Initiatives. All right, so at the top of this page, you'll see, and at the top of every page, if there's required evidence that we ask you to upload, you'll see it here at the top. It says documents. You've got type, document template, and document link. So the type here, our very first one, asks for evidence of stakeholder feedback from each required stakeholder to inform the CTE local application in CLA development. This is going to be anything that you sent out or any way that you were able to capture feedback. Now, we do understand that in some instances, you may not have a particular stakeholder group that responded, even though you reached out several times. That's okay. We need you to upload the evidence in the way of a Word document or something with a narrative where you say, we reached out to these individuals that are a part of this stakeholder group via this contact method, and they did not respond. That way we know that the attempt was made. Otherwise, we'll need to see evidence of stakeholder feedback. That is a requirement for your CLNA and local application anyhow, so we would need to see that evidence. I'll go ahead and show you how to upload this evidence. That way you have that understanding as well. So you'll click on upload new data, or excuse me, upload new. You may get a little message box. You can just click OK. Okay, so when that comes up, you'll click select for upload data file, or if you have the file just over to the side, I've also found that you can just drag it here and drop it. You have the option to name the document. If you do not name the document, it will default and name that document whatever evidence type we're asking for. So in this instance, if I uploaded a document here, it would name without a name, it would name it evidence of stakeholder feedback from each required stakeholder, and on and on. You'll see here it says upload at least one document. We're still in the test phase, getting this ready to go live. So the rest of these will say in the future upload at least one document. So you will have to upload something for each one of those. All right, so the next one says evidence of ongoing stakeholder consultation, including representatives from each required stakeholder group. So ongoing is the key word there. We need to see that you are having ongoing communications with your stakeholders, and it's not just a one-time thing. Again, that doesn't have to be in-person meetings. That could be virtual meetings, emails, surveys, however you're reaching out to them. Then we ask for documents such as letters, newspaper ads, web postings, flyers, emails that you use or your LEA uses to notify private schools and the general public of CTE offerings and the professional development activities offered by your system. The next one I asked for is consulted stakeholder list, which must include the name, company, stakeholder type, that kind of thing. Without all of these elements, whatever you upload will not be adequate. We'll need to know their stakeholder type for sure, name and all of that, so that we know that there's a representative or there are representatives from each required stakeholder group as defined by Perkins 5. We'll also need to see evidence of program of study advisory council meetings, such as sign-in sheets, agendas, minutes for the meetings, or evidence of other methods of communication. So obviously you're not having in-person meetings this year, but last year you may have. You can upload that here. If those meetings were held via Zoom or WebEx, one of those virtual platforms, or any of those virtual platforms, you would need to put your evidence here. Next, we ask for active and utilized CTE MOUs or articulation agreements in place with post-secondary institutions. If you have that, you would upload that here. If you do not, you would upload a Word document stating that you do not have any active CTE MOUs or articulation agreements. Then we have evidence of professional development and or support to district CTE teachers in the development of SSQI portfolios. So if you've had PD with those teachers regarding SSQIs, communications with them regarding that, you would upload that there. All right, and then you'll see we have the agree, disagree questions here. You can see the drop down that I've clicked here. You have the option to agree or disagree. You would select one of those. If you click disagree, you would then need to type in a response in this box, or when you go to submit your instrument, when you click draft complete, it would give you validation errors and not let you move forward. If I click agree, then there's no response required. So this question says all required stakeholder groups as defined by Perkins 5 were consulted on the creation of the CLNA and local application. Again, if you did that, you would click agree. If you are unable to reach all stakeholder groups, you would click disagree and then give that response here. That does not mean that there's going to be a finding of noncompliance. If you reached out and more than once and made a good faith effort to contact those individuals, then the understanding is you did your due diligence there. The LEA collects CTE follow-up data to measure each of the following, and this walks through your follow-up data and the reason that you perform follow-up, as well as it's one of the core indicators. You would answer that question, agree, disagree there. Then we get into our pre-visit open response to be answered by the LEA staff. So here we ask you to describe the process used to engage stakeholders in an effort to gain feedback used to inform the CLNA and local application development, including program study improvement. So here you would just give a short response describing the process, how you went about contacting your stakeholder groups, what method did you use to get their feedback, and how did you utilize that. You'll notice at the top of each one of these boxes, obviously, you see there the spell checker, you've got the undo, you've got cut, you've got all of your normal font, color, bold, underline, italicize. You can also insert links as well. Next, we ask you to describe the program of study the LEA offers and how they were identified as high skill, high wage, and in-demand programs of study at the local level. Again, I'll point out the Perkins citations. You'll see there. You'll be able to see, for instance, this has 2 citations for Perkins, but the first one is Perkins 5, section 113B2B. And that's what you would go to in the Perkins law, that section and area in the law, to see the reasoning for this question. What program of study does the LEA offer that are in support of non-traditional career fields? Describe the process and data sources to determine in-demand industry sectors and occupations at the local, regional, and state level. What program of study are justified as needed through labor market data that are not currently being offered in the LEA? What are the barriers to offering these programs of study? So that basically wants to know, are there programs of study that you could be offering based on labor market data that you're not currently offering for some reason? And that could be many different reasons why, and just discuss the barriers here. I want to point out that this is a compliance instrument, but we also want to ask the questions to one, ensure compliance, but also to get you and your staff thinking about some of these things and how to improve your programs, your CTE programs in your LEA. And that might be thinking through barriers and why you're not able to offer certain programs of study, and hopefully thinking about how to solve those issues, how to get around those barriers. Your next question, what percentage of CTE concentrators are involved in career and technical student organizations? There is not a minimum percent, but we want to know approximately what percentage of your CTE concentrators are involved in those organizations. Describe how the LEA plans to increase work-based learning opportunities for CTE concentrators. With that being one of our core indicators there, that's a key question as well. Describe how the LEA utilizes the CTE follow-up data collected from CTE concentrators after graduation from secondary school. So you'll notice up top, we asked if you use or if you collect that data and you say agree, then you'll have to describe either way here how you utilize that CTE follow-up data. I apologize if I'm going a little fast, but we have several sections that I want to be able to show you. We only have 45 minutes. So. Our next section here is size, scope, and quality indicators. At the LEA level, the only thing we ask is for a list of new programs of study that are less than 3 years old. So we want to be able to know which programs of study are less than 3 years. That way, when we are reviewing those SSQIs, that we'll know that, and we'll keep that in mind as we're reviewing those. According to CCTE, we're still going to give leeway to those new programs of study, and if they're chosen in the 25% that we will be reviewing, we'll give feedback on those, but they won't count against you in any kind of way, compliance or quality way. And then we ask for teacher lists and the content areas for the monitoring year. That way we know that we have everybody accounted for as we're reviewing SSQIs. It doesn't say so here, but at the school level, you'll have a size, scope, and quality indicators. So site level or school level, it'll ask for access to links to, however we're going to get access to your SSQI portfolios. And as an FYI to you, we will be reviewing at least 25%, but we'll need all of them so that we can choose which 25% we're going to review. So again, you would click Upload New and go through that process of uploading your documents and answering your questions. Now, I do want to point out that with ePlan, you always have the session timeout countdown. I want to ensure that you understand this is kind of like with Perkins Basic. If you're working on something in a page for Perkins Basic and you forget about it, you walk away, and this session timeout goes to 0, you'll lose everything that you have added to this page. So ensure that you are saving as you go so that you're not losing any of the work that you've done. So your first agree, disagree here is all programs of study are required to submit a digital SSQI portfolio yearly. Well, that should be agree. If it's not, you'll disagree and you'll say here why. which is another reason we want teacher lists and content areas for the monitoring year. That way we can ensure that we've gotten portfolios from everyone. CTE teachers and applicable staff are provided ongoing and sustained professional development to, this is a typo that will be removed, development regarding SSQI portfolios. Agree or disagree? And then your pre-visit open responses start here. So how does the LEA ensure that the programs of study offered are approved programs of study with sequence courses that meet the needs identified by the local advisory council and align to local and regional employment opportunities? Describe data and or evidence the LEA uses to advise CTE program heads as documentation to show that a program of study is justified as meeting local employment needs. How does the LEA ensure that schools are offering CTE courses and programs of sufficient size, scope, and quality, and what evidence is required in SSQI portfolios and justification?
Hey, Michael, it's Geneva.
Yes.
I have a question that came in chat. I'm hoping that you can address it to the group.
Okay.
If a program of study does not receive Perkins money, do they have to do an SSQI for the purposes of monitoring?
I would need a little more clarification on that. If we're talking about a program of study that just didn't get any funds spent on it in one particular year, but they normally do, I would want them to complete an SSQI portfolio. If it is a program of study that just never receives Perkins funds and it's just an additional program of study that the LEA funds, then they would not have to complete an SSQI portfolio.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good question. Again, that brings up a good point, that this is to ensure compliance for the Perkins 5 federal grant. So it stands to reason that we would be monitoring any area that Perkins funding was spent on. Thank you. All right, how does the LEA ensure that CTE educators are of high quality? So that asks for, there's no cookie cutter response or anything that goes here. It would be, how does your LEA ensure that? We know that LEAs use different methods or look for different things to ensure that, whether it's industry certifications, their licensure, continuing education, the programs that they offer, everything that would ensure how your LEA ensures that CTE educators are of high quality. Then we ask you to discuss PD opportunities provided to CTE teachers to improve educator quality. And that is the last question in that section. So since you can copy and paste into those short answer areas, I will note I've had some directors ask me, so if we have access to these questions beforehand and I want to work offline, can I just answer those questions in a Word document and then copy and paste that into where it goes later on? Yes, that is, you have that capability. So your next section there is effective educators. It asks for procedures for recruiting and retaining educators, including the recruitment and retention of teachers considered non-traditional in their fields. Teacher prep program partnerships, if you've got any of those, with maybe a Botlow or a Tennessee Tech or a TSU, whatever that might be. You'd upload that. If you don't have any, you would upload a document saying that you don't have any. Teacher preparation program practices, partnerships, excuse me. Individual improvement plans for teachers. That asks for a template. So when you have a teacher that is required to have an improvement plan there, we would like to see a template of that. And that is fine if it is an LEA, that's used LEA wide when you have a teacher that has an improvement plan. It doesn't have to be specific to just CTE. Initiatives and supports for new teachers, communication, meeting notes, process and procedures. If you have a mentor plan, you would include that there. Again, these will all say upload at least one document. When you get this in September, when you have access to this. And since I mentioned that reminds me, we are planning on allowing you all to have access to this in ePlan around the beginning of September. We'll notify you all that will be taking part in on-site monitoring, that it is open in ePlan and you have access. CTE Director License, Certification, and Endorsement. We asked for that there. LEA CTE Director Job Description. Calendar of CTE Director Job Duties and Activities. If you have more than one role in the LEA, this wants to see basically evidence of your, and this could be a PAR, it could be however you keep track. If you have multiple job duties beyond CTE Director, we want to ensure your percentage. If you have if you're secondary supervisor as well as CTE Director, we want to see that calendar sample there. LEA-wide professional development plan with CTE sustained professional development. Evidence of additional CTE professional development opportunities of the district offered PD. So example, CTE Summer Institute, industry certification, training, those kinds of things. And then CTE PD calendar with connected PD descriptions, agendas, and sign-in sheets. So this is to ensure that you're having that compliance, or to ensure compliance, that you are offering professional development in a sustained, ongoing manner as Perkins 5 defines professional development. And then it asks for the PD evaluation or survey samples there. Because in Perkins 5, it does state that we have to ensure that our professional development, we have to evaluate that and ensure it's high quality as well. You have one agree, disagree here. The LEA ensures CTE educators receive PD opportunities that are sustained, intensive, collaborative, job embedded, data-driven, classroom-focused, and evidence-based where practicable. That'll be added on to the end of that because it is a part of the definition of professional development. So you would click agree, disagree. If you disagree, you would put your justification there, and you can see you have 8,000 characters that you're able to utilize there for space. What is the LEA's formal plan to recruit highly effective CTE educators from diverse backgrounds? How does the LEA distribute recruited CTE educators in an equitable manner? That's especially important if you have multiple schools that have programs of study. We want to know how you are able to distribute those teachers, or how you plan to do that. What is the process to fill CTE teaching positions in hard to staff areas? We know we have several CTE programs of study that sometimes it's hard to get an educator with the proper credentials and experience in those classes. What is your process to ensure that you have those high quality educators when that happens? Describe the specific strategies and or incentives to retain highly effective CTE teachers. What do you do, or what does your LEA do to ensure that you're able to retain your highly effective teachers in CTE? Describe any agreements or partnerships with universities or prep programs to identify and attract potential CTE teaching candidates. This could be, maybe you have, I use Tennessee Tech as an example a lot because I live near there. Maybe you have a partnership with the education program at Tennessee Tech. You also have contacts with folks in the engineering department, and they let you know when they're going to have career fairs and that kind of thing. You make it a point to always go and recruit for positions you might have available that fall within that area. All right, so I've been asked to repeat what I said there about the access to instruments. So we plan to give you all access to the on-site monitoring instrument around the 1st of September. So you all will be able to go in. We will not begin monitoring until around mid-October. So even for those LEAs and those folks that are being monitored around mid-October, you'll have at least a month and a half-ish to be able to complete this this monitoring instrument. Provide the percentages of the CT director's salary and funding sources there. Describe any other LEA obligations outside of CTE director duties for which the CTE director is responsible. What is the process to determine the effectiveness of professional development? Describe any training CTE directors receive on providing access to CTE curriculum to the maximum extent possible for all children, including those eligible for special education. Describe PD provided to CTE educators, special education professionals, and paraprofessionals collaboratively with general education personnel. This could be when you have your in-services throughout the year and they receive PD together. You would talk about that there, or additional opportunities. Describe any specific CTE professional development opportunities in addition to the required district PD. So this might be PD that you encourage your CTE director or CTE teachers to attend, whether that be summer institute or industry certification trainings, what have you. You would talk about that there. Describe the connection between the LEA and the CTE professional development plans. We have about 8 minutes left here. This last section, we probably won't get to it, but I'll go ahead and say the majority of you it won't pertain to. For the most part, equitable services to non-public schools, you'll have to upload how and when you try to reach out to non-public schools to share with them the offerings of programs of study that you have. And then a lot of you, the charter schools won't pertain to. So what we're going to do for those of you that do not have charter schools in your area, if we can, what we're going to do, we identify that LEA has no charter schools. The TDOE will mark this NA, not this page, but the charter schools page, NA, and that will gray that out. So you won't be responsible for completing that page. Evidence showing, this is the Students with Disabilities page. Evidence showing implementation of CTE level or LEA level professional development in support of CTE staff serving students with disabilities. You'll have to upload evidence of that. Trainings for CTE staff serving students with disabilities. Sample of career guidance and or counseling for students with disabilities. This is a requirement as of Perkins 5. I know that most of you out there are already doing this for all students, but we need to ensure that our students with disabilities are receiving these services. As we know, many of them go on to have wonderful and fulfilling careers based on what they have, the CTE training they've received. As a teacher, I saw that a lot. Your questions here: how does the LEA work with schools to address accessibility and to modify, if applicable, CTE facilities and space for students with disabilities? You see here, this also has the IDEA is cited there, so it crosses multiple federal laws there. Describe the process the LEA takes to train CTE teachers on delivery of service within IEPs. So how are your teachers notified of IEPs? How are they trained to ensure that they modify or accommodate or whatever it is they need to do to ensure the IEP is carried out with fidelity and followed for each student that has one of those? How does the LEA address and monitor transition plans that include CTE coursework? Describe how the LEA provides CTE curriculum access to students with disabilities, including those with low incidence disabilities, as well as those with significant cognitive disabilities. And then your last question there: how does the LEA ensure that students with disabilities are provided EPSO, and industry certification opportunities while tracking progress towards their post-secondary and or career goals. Here, this section is students in special populations. All right, so we ask you here, procedure or process for ID of students in CTE with parents who are on active duty in the military. That could be, maybe you include something on their registration document, a box that they check, whatever it is. I know we've had a lot of questions on how it is you're supposed to identify those students, but that's one example of what you could do. Evidence of LEA collaboration with schools regarding CTE engagement with families of ELs in a language and manner they understand. And then evidence of training CTE teachers on EL differentiation strategies and assessment accommodations. So presentation and proof of attendance there. That should be something that you're doing for all teachers, but we want to know as well. We want you to give evidence of training of CTE teachers. All right, agree, disagree. The LEA works with schools to address equitable access to CTE program elements with additional financial requirements. That's agree, disagree. And then how is the LEA identifying and addressing gaps identified in the CLNA between ED and non-ED students? Describe any additional resources such as we owe a Title I funds that are available to support certain learners, and describe how the district utilizes those resources. Again, it's not a finding of non-compliance, but if you say we do not utilize, we owe Title I funds, and yada yada, that will suffice. Describe the process for identifying CTE students who are economically disadvantaged in order to provide any additional applicable supports. You'll see that there is a section for each one of your students who are in the special populations area. So English learners is the next, excuse me. We're very short on time. We've got 2 minutes. So I won't have time to go through the rest of these, but they follow kind of the same pattern for each student or excuse me, group special populations. We have the agree, disagree, and then we'll have some open response for each one. You have single parents, you have out of work individuals, homeless individuals. All of those are listed on this page. So I want to go ahead and sum up a couple of things for you all. We will be reaching out to you next month with the schools that will be participating for your LEA. And with the dates of the monitoring, we will be communicating with you to ensure that we are scheduling around any big, dates that are going on, any big events in your LEA, that kind of thing. We don't want this to be an unpleasant and unmanageable process. We want this to be manageable for you all. Again, this was all identified through risk analysis. If your LEA was notified that they would be monitored on site, you should have access to the monitoring instrument around September 1st. We will notify you all of that and when that's available. We will also be sending a PDF of your pages here in the Perkins 5 monitoring instrument for on-site with the questions there. We're going to be working on a Q&A document for you all. So be looking for that in the coming weeks to better support you during this monitoring process. And as always, feel free to reach out to me. My email, obviously, if you got my communications last week, for an on-site monitoring. You have that. I will go ahead. You can see here, this is your keyword. Make that bigger there. Your keyword for this session is brilliant. And Geneva, if you're able to put that in the chat, if you would do that as well. I appreciate you all joining me today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email or call me. And I look forward to working with you all.